Welcome back to Querétaro Cooking Club. Today we're gonna talk about some very cultural thing in Mexico. We're gonna talk about pan de muerto. The pan de muerto is made of a center, which is the skull, the arms of the person, and it's made of anise. It also must have four candelillas to simulate the gods of the Mexican culture. It can have a lot of shapes, as we can see here. The bread comes from pre-Hispanic times, the papalot tlaxcali, which was exclusive to this ceremony. Apparently, it was like an omelette, to which a steel in the shape of a butterfly was printed on the steel raw dough. Once cooked, it was painted colorful. The legend of the bread of the dead, or pan de muerto, tells that it was an offering to the goddess Sihuapipilti, dedicated to women who died from their first childbirth. It was believed that they hovered in the air causing diseases among children. For that reason, they gave them gifts in the temple or in the crossroads of the road. This is how the bread is going to be. From the photo we can see that it tastes fantastic. To start making our bread of the dead, we will need sugar, yeast, vanilla or azar spice, butter, milk, oranges, flour and sesame. We will start by heating 50 milliliters of milk in the microwave or in the stove until it reaches room temperature or a little warmer, to make it easier for the yeast to beat. Then we will add the yeast and a tablespoon of sugar so that the yeast feeds on it and increase the speed of the reaction that we want. We move it with a spoon or blender so that everything is well stirred and thus the time is reduced. It is very important not to salt the yeast directly, as the salt can spoil the yeast and no longer have the effect we want in the recipe. We take it into a place where it can be at a temperature higher than a normal, and we let it rest for 10 to 30 minutes. While we wait for the yeast mixture to become twice as large, we are going to weigh the flour we have. It does not matter much what type of flour we have, as long as it is wheat flour. It does not change much how it is made or nor our taste. It can only change the texture of the flour a little and it makes it a bit easier for us to knead the dough that we have. But there is not much difference and you should not buy the most expensive ones in the supermarket, since we will now notice the difference between expensive and cheap. If they are on a diet or not eating things that hurt them so much, they want to change the brand. Also, we're gonna take our flour and put it into our bowl to mix it. To give that touch of orange flavor, we will only grate the zest of the orange very delicately. We should not scrape the white part of the orange, since that part of the orange could give a bitter taste to the bread. So it is the best to grate only the orange part of the two oranges. And if you do not like the flavor of the orange very much, you can put only the zest of one orange, or maybe half orange. We're gonna start to put our things in our bowl to start the mix. As we can see, we can put the orange and the salt. We can give only a bit of salt and put it just like that. We make small hole in the center of the mixture to be able to put the following ingredients of the recipe. If you wish, you can put salt on the extremure of the mixture to make it more tasty. We're gonna put the two eggs in the hole, and we also add milk to give the dough a fluffier touch in the same way, and we begin to stir. There are people who do not like to knead since they feel a bit disgusted to feel it in their hands, so they use gloves to stir. But that is not highly recommended, since if you do not wash the gloves well after using them, and you continue to use them while kitchens can fill food with germs. that had already been removed. The most advisable thing is to use your own hands and wash them after each step that we have in the recipe. After we add the yeast mixture that we had, it should be with a much more solid consistency and with the appearance of a sponge. So it will be more easy to us to make the bread. For a better handling of the ingredients and to avoid so much mixing in the kitchen, things can be added little by little to give greater consistency. We're gonna have to add 150 grams of butter that we had saved. If you want to add less, there are no problem. It will only be a little dry, and in the same way, if you want to add more, it will be more humid. To help us, use a little knife to cut it into smaller pieces. We can also heat a little to handle more easy and mix it into the dough. An important point when we are brewing is that we must heat the mixture against the surface so that the air bubbles that are inside are eliminated and it is easier for us to manipulate it. It also heating it makes the fermentation of the yeast continue without problems. At this point you are mostly tired, but you're only at the half of the video, so you have to keep doing it. Now we put the sugar with the butter and look at that. It looks like a lot of sugar, but it is not that much. They struggle a lot when kneading. What they can do is put more flour in the dough and knead their hands to prevent it more sticking. But if they add a lot of flour, they can dilute the dough, so that is no longer as good as it could have been. Once the dough is ready, we make it into a ball shape and we leave it on our plate and put a damp cloth on the surface so that it does not dehydrate and it remains dry. It is the best to let it rest at a temperature of approximately 38 Celsius degrees for at least 3 hours. When we take it out of the plate, we can see that it is bigger than before and even was spongier consistence. When we take out of the plate, we will have to knead it again to remove the air that it was inside. But instead of kneading it as we were doing, we will dedicate ourselves more to heat it in squeezing it. We will do this for a few minutes until we feel that it no longer has the same consistency as before. You can do this for a few minutes, like 5 or 10, and it will be much easier than the that before. Now we will cut into 3 non-equal parts, 2 for the body and 1 for the bones. We will put butter in the baking mold or we can put baking paper on it so that the loaf will no longer stick. We will put it back for one last time for about 30 minutes while we can preheat the oven to 180 degrees. Look at that. It is. We can decorate our bread with oil and sesame or with sugar and melted butter. We decide on the second option. You can add as much as you want. We put, as you can see, a lot of them, but it was so much tasty. If you're gonna add the butter, you must have to heat it before so it is liquid and you only had to brush it into the bread. Look at that. After 25 to 30 minutes, it is ready to eat. Look how wonderful it is. Approved. We are waiting for you in our next video of Mexican cuisine.